Today, I want to show you a pattern for handling expected errors in your Next.js application. And this is going to be very much so related to this article here in the Next.js docs, in which they cover very similar stuff here. So I will link this below as well if you want kind of further reading on this. But effectively, what we're going to do is cover handling expected errors, errors that occur within the normal kind of operations of your application, errors that you can foresee take place within your application. How should you best kind of handle those? And we're going to do those within this server action here within Next.js, but all of this kind of still applies to if you're just using a server component as well. So effectively what we're doing here is in this create user server action, which we use here in our sign up form, we use this form action or create user. But what you're going to see here is that we actually use this useActionState hook from React here. And what this is basically this useActionState as the first argument. It takes a server action. So this is our create user server action here, where we basically just make a mock request to this JSON placeholder API. And then we do some more stuff down here for handling errors, but we'll cover that in a second. But here within the sign up, we call useActionState with our create user action. And then we call it with an initial state here. So the message is just an empty string. And that's going to return an array with 3 items, similar to using the useState hook in React. So the first item is going to be our current state. The second item is going to be our form action that we can use within our form action here. Just how you would kind of, if you weren't using this useActionState, you might pass create user right into this action here as well. But in this case, we want to use the action returned from useActionState. And then the third item is also going to be pending. So is your action currently running right now or not? Is there some sort of loading state? So for us, it's going to be pending. If we're still awaiting this fetch right here, then our action is going to be pending, which can definitely be helpful. And our state here, it's just going to be the message. So initially, it's going to be an empty string. So you can see us use this like right here below our email. If there is a message, we're going to show it here. And we show it in red because our message here is going to represent an error message after they submit to their sign up form. Because in our actions.ts here, our actions, we check if the res is not okay, or we also add this other check if email is equal to an error, but that's basically just so I can force this return message here. But normally you probably wouldn't have this here, or you might do some validation on email, although you might do that in different places. But basically you're going to check if the res is not okay, then return a message saying whatever is appropriate for your application. Here, I'm just returning, please enter a valid email. But if the res is okay, so it doesn't enter this if block, just navigate them back to the dashboard. So I'm going to keep our email equal error here check, so I can force errors here with my email, because this demo placeholder API is always going to return res.okay, but this will allow me to force this message so you can see it. But this is basically how we're handling this expected error. If it's not okay within our server action here, if the response is not okay, then return this message here. And then within our signup.tsx, we use this useActionState here, passing in our action and the initial state, which returns our state, the form action, and pending. We use our form action right here within our form, just how we would have used our create user form action right here. But since we're using this hook, we're going to use the form action returned from the hook. And then we can use our state.message here below our input. We can disable our button if the form action is pending. And then we also check, okay, if it's pending, make the text say submitting, else just say sign up. So let's see how this looks here. I'm going to actually slow down my network a little bit here so you can see this a little bit easier. And I'm going to go to network, and then we are going to set the throttling, and I'm going to set it to 3G right here. I'm going to type in demo at demo.com. I'm going to click sign up. You see it says submitting and the button is disabled because the form action was pending there. And then there's no error, so it sent me to our dashboard here. And if I come back, it's going to take a second because we still have slow network. But now if I type in our error email here, and then I click sign up, it's going to be submitting and disabled while it's pending. But now, since it's an expected error, we just return, please enter a valid email. Because what we do is we return that from our form action here. Our message is please enter a valid email. So our state here is going to be set to please enter a valid email, which we show right here with our state.message. So if there's no error, everything works as expected. It submits it, it sets it to pending. We showed submitting within our button and our button was disabled. And then here, if we put in our error email and I click sign up, you see it's in pending state here. And then once it completes, we now have this error message because it is an expected error that we checked for in our server action. So that is a nice pattern for handling expected errors in your server actions, which is effectively what they cover right here within their docs. If the res isn't okay, then add this, and then you can also pass this to useActionState, which they show here within their docs. So feel free to go read this as well for a little bit more information. But then they also cover for expected errors in server components. You basically do the same thing. If you have a fetch request here at the top of your server component, then you can check, okay, if your res is not okay, then you can return some UI saying, hey, this request failed. It's kind of an expected error here. So we're just going to return there was an error. So that tends to be a good pattern for handling expected errors in your server actions and server components. We're still going to cover handling unexpected errors here in my next video, but hopefully this gives you a good pattern for handling expected errors within your applications. So thanks for tuning into this, and I'll see you in that next one.